12 minutes past 9. Radio Wammo breakfast. Friday morning, of course.
Suckling on the teat of tech with Paul Brislen and Wammo on Kiwi.
Yeah, let's talk high tech from audit.wordpress.com. Paul Brislen on Twitter as well, twitter.com/Paul Brislen. Here he is this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Very good. A couple of interesting stories this morning. First up, American Airlines have had a bit of a fail.
They have had a bit of a social media fail, yes. Yeah, American Airlines doesn't operate in New Zealand, but has a fairly large presence in North America, as you would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a shockingly bad website. So bad that a developer, a chap who designs websites for various organisations, posted a fairly detailed, lengthy rant on what's wrong with their website, why it doesn't work, how it would be easier to make it work for the customers, and pointing out a whole bunch of stuff. And interestingly, he got a response from a guy who is a developer at American Airlines, who said, look, I couldn't agree more with some of the points you've made. You've obviously never worked for a big corporation, because let me tell you, this is how it all goes. You've got to get sign-off from marketing, and then after marketing signed it off, you've got to go to technology, and so on and so forth.
Which is so true.
It's very measured. Well, it is. Big companies are like, they're not nimble and agile, and we're not talking about a speedboat here, we're talking about an oil tanker. And trying to get the ship of state to turn is a fairly precarious business. Purely because of the maths. If you've got 1,600 people, it's very hard to get agreement. When you've only got 3 people, it's very easy to get agreement.
Mm-hmm.
So, he wrote a very measured, thoughtful, and useful piece. It was a really good piece on the pros and cons of working for a big corporate and the changes that he'd like to make and the process that he's going through to get those changes made. It acknowledged all of the customers' problems. It accepted that things weren't quite right and demonstrated a willingness to try and come up with an answer. So they fired him.
No.
Yes, within half an hour they figured out who he was based on IP addresses and secret black box recordings and God knows what else. Tracked him down to his desk and escorted him off the property because his contract says quite clearly he's not allowed to talk to the media in any way, shape or form, and posting a comment to a blog, even an anonymous posting like that, was a breach of the company's media policy.
Yeah, and I guess traditionally, I suppose that is the case. They do have a point there, but whether or not that's right or not is another matter.
Well, that's it. And I'm in PR, and quite frankly, if somebody in the organisation that I was representing was to start talking outside the process to the media, then all hell would break loose.
Yeah.
But firing him probably isn't going to solve the problem of a website experience which is so bad that people are writing blog posts about it, and now all you've done is alert a whole bunch of people right around the planet to how poor your communications process is as well. So it's interesting. It's starting to bubble along online at the moment. I saw it a post off Twitter. I'm passing it on to you. We'll have a chat about it. There'll be other people having a discussion. Basically, it does not paint American Airlines in a terribly good light at all. And this is the real problem with social media that some of these big companies don't get. They think they control the message all the way down the line. And I'm sorry, guys, but you don't.
Not anymore.
You absolutely don't. No, those days, if you ever did, that day has long since gone. And unfortunately, you're not playing catch up. You're actually damaging your reputation.
So they're also not facing the facts of the original problem. The reason why it was posted in the first place was the fact that their website is terrible, and it's
the website's so bad,
and it's a bad user experience.
Get things done. Exactly. So rather than trying to fix that problem, they've solved another problem, which is clearly, well, as mentioned, we're talking outside of there. What you've got there is a staff member who is so passionate about his job and about the company he works for, he's willing to spend the time to write a very detailed reply. I mean, you have a look at it. It's I'll post the links on the website later on. It's a fairly detailed reply about how companies work and what he'd like to see the website do. That's somebody that you don't stop from doing that. Okay, sure, he needs a bit of pulling into line. You can't be just going off and answering people's posts on websites without checking with somebody. But let's encourage him. Let's give him the tools to go and do that and be a champion for the business.
People want to check that out right now. Dustin Curtis, DustinCurtis.com.
He's the guy who is the blogger who wrote the original post, and he's got all the detail on his site there.
All right,
Fascinating stuff.
next story, and this is very timely, of course, for Kiwi kids as they head into exams this month.
Yep.
Not only kids, of course, but university students as well. And they're in Denmark. They're allowing children to use the internet during exams.
That's right. That's right. No longer is it just an open book exam. It's you can use the internet. You can't use it for two-way communication. You can't email a question to somebody and have them send you an answer.
Right.
But you can use the internet for research. You can Google things. You can look things up, and you can use it as part of your exam process. And the thinking behind that is that they're not testing whether or not the kids know what happened at the Battle of Hastings in 1066.
Yeah.
That kind of, simply knowing facts is not what they're testing in these exams. What they're testing is your ability to analyze a situation, process information, and come up with some rational thought at the end of it. And that's really quite a tricky thing to test, isn't it? You've sort of moved on to a whole new level. And I think that's a really good thing. This day and age, you can sit there with a phone, a cell phone in your pocket at an exam, and come up with an answer to any question anybody asks you of a factual basis. What is the periodic table element? What element is PB? You can look that up and find out it's lead quite easily. You don't need to have that blasted into your head, sitting there learning your times table over and over again. You can figure it out quite quickly without having to do that. So now the education sector is faced with this huge challenge of, well, how do we teach kids and how do we assess kids' learning when you've got a world when every single fact is at your fingertips within seconds? Some of them faster than the teachers can do it, because the teachers are still playing catch-up in a lot of cases.
I mean, this argument has been around for a wee while, even before the internet, about exams themselves, whether or not you can test someone's knowledge in a certain time frame, and they can't go and open a dictionary.
That's right. I remember sitting in maths classes in the sixth form, which is how old I am, and being told that we weren't allowed to bring a calculator in, but we had to bring in our log tables. A little book full of logarithms. I have no idea what the thinking is behind that, because to me, if I've got a resource, then why is the resource not an electronic one, which gives me the answer a lot more quickly?
No, but
so that is, it's a very big debate, isn't it?
Wouldn't the concern be now, though, that so you've got access to the internet during the exam, but suddenly you're off to Farmville on Facebook, and you're tending to your virtual farm.
Yes, well, if you want to go down that track, I imagine your exam score will probably be less than optimal.
Right.
To put it mildly, you've only got 3 hours. The kids that they're interviewed in this particular BBC story I read were quite interesting. They said that they don't think there will be any cheating because there's simply no time. The pressure is on to deliver a comprehensive answer to the questions being posed. And I guess when the questions are something more complex than what happened in Hastings in 1066, then you actually do have to put in a bit of thought, and you probably wouldn't have time in those time constraints.
I know what happened.
Do you?
And Hastings in 1066, Paul Brislen, the commander-in-chief, won.
Well, hey, but I am going to find those weapons of mass destruction. They're there somewhere. Big sheaths of arrows.
But just quickly before we go, mentioning because I brought up Farmville, because you're not much of a Facebook user, are you? No.
I avoid Facebook. I'm Mr. Twitter. Yes.
Yeah. This Farmville, I haven't played it myself, and I'm not going to, because I've heard people just get addicted to this thing, and the most surprising people that you wouldn't have thought are getting into this game called Farmville. Are running a farm and actually spending money on this farm, on virtual seeds and the like.
Actually, real cash.
Real cash, are laying down cash, yeah. And the makers behind this game, I think they've made a couple of other sort of successful, sort of viral online games. They are making millions. In fact, I think they may have just recently sold their company for squillions.
Excellent.
Isn't that amazing?
And what they're doing is they're shipping little pictures of seeds, and people are buying them. That's fantastic. It's one small step from there to World of Warcraft, though, and I've got to warn you, that's not a step I'd want to encourage you to take.
No, won't be, no.
I'm
quite happy racing cars at the moment.
Well, countdown to Modern Warfare 2.
Of course, yes.
Released very shortly, I think less than a week now.
That's something we haven't talked about either, but there's a bit of controversy. In fact, I'll probably end up talking to Game Junkie NZ about that. There's some kind of controversy about terrorists inside the game.
There is. But when you've got a game that's all about shooting people and you're a counter-terrorist, you're going to come across some terrorists who are shooting some nice people. So, yes. Yes. An interesting one. But, that's not too far away. Biggest game launch in history they're talking about at the moment. So, yes, for a lot of people who've never heard of it, it will be quite fascinating to watch, I'm sure.
Paul Brislen, audient.wordpress.com, and
thank you very much.
Twitter.com/Paul Brislen is where they'll find you. Until next week, have a great weekend.